Throughout most of human history, both the population and the economy grew extremely slowly. Beginning in the middle of the 18th century, population growth began to pick up. With the Industrial Revolution beginning in the 1820s, the economy began to grow as well. As we entered the fossil fuel age, cheap energy from coal and then from oil multiplied the energy available per person by 5 and then by 12 times. Suddenly, we had the power to transform the world as never before. However, the 20th century eclipsed everything that came before. In the last 100 years, the world's population has quadrupled. Industrial output has grown 40 times. The global economy has expanded 16-fold. Fish catch, 35 times. CO2 emissions increased 13 times, while the blue whale population decreased 99.75%. At an average growth rate of 3%, the size of the economy doubles every 23 years. Double the resources, double the cars, double the emissions.
2009 began with a sinking global economy paralyzed by a worldwide credit crunch, bank failures, and investor panic from Wall Street to Tokyo.
Could Europe go into economic meltdown?
That is a very scary world.
The United States is not expected to drive global economic growth.
A bad situation could become dramatically worse.
Some are beginning to suggest that the global financial crisis may be receding.
A huge surge in jobs is being predicted in 2010 as the economy bounces back from the financial crisis.
We have gone to economic war, and the euro won't survive that economic war.
A bad situation could become dramatically worse.
This is not just a financial crisis. It's also a crisis of poverty and inequality, energy, water. In addition to the poverty, inequality, social crisis, the ecological crisis is the most serious one.
If what we have had is not sustainable, let's stop. Let's stop moving in the same direction. Let's change our direction.
I think the current crisis is providing us with an opportunity to rethink what we think an economy is for, what we want from an economy, and whether we can find a better way to design our economy.
Is anybody talking about less growth?
Less degrowth.
No politician would dream of saying, I'm now going to start having negative growth, or even I'm going to stop growth.
History does show that you need to have economic growth before you have job growth.
Everybody's getting very worried that the economy is not going to grow much next year.
Even as we rescue this economy, we must work to rebuild it stronger than before. Stronger than before.
To be against economic growth, in my opinion, is not only stupid, it's criminal and possibly evil.
The opening of Europe's biggest urban shopping mall in West London. A building spanning 43 acres, built across 9 London postcodes at a cost of $3 billion. 280 shops, 50 restaurants and valet parking. Recession? What recession?
We'll never run out of anything. We can't run out of anything.
Right. So what you're saying is that the economy is sort of like being on a bike. If you don't keep going forward, you fall off.
But what are we going forward into? It's not about going backwards or getting off the bike, but finding new directions of movement.
The whole idea of growth without limit, with no end in view, beyond the process itself, has become a very dubiously sustainable project for us to live on.
The entire concept of growth is a hoax. Because what is the meaning of growth? If my wife is a housewife, a good housewife, there will be no growth. But suppose if tomorrow she becomes a prostitute, then immediately money will be flowing and there will be growth.
The importance of the economy should not be placed on growing, but on producing the most well-being.
Currently, our economic system is saying we want to grow on a finite planet, which is called committing mass suicide.
Most of the benefits of economic growth over the last 30 years have been concentrated in the hands of the top 10-20% of the population. So the economy's got bigger, but the income and wealth have become more unequally distributed.
We believe that markets can lead us forward and drive progress. It's clearly taking the place of religion, and that most of our moral decisions are framed simply by, is the price the right price?
I think the first step that needs to be taken to make sure economics is about maintaining life and renewing life on this planet, the life of humans, human communities, and all other species.
La décroissance, c'est d'abord un slogan, et donc c'est absurde décroître pour décroître. Mais précisément c'est provocateur parce que croître pour croître, est-ce que ce n'est pas aussi absurde?
For me, degrowth is a physical question, how to decrease the physical impacts of the economy without a decrease in well-being.
It's a very controversial issue, this one of the growth. So we can claim for degrowth, but then how are we going to do it? Are we ready to start working 2 hours less, for instance?
As to what an economy that didn't rely on growth would look like, growth in leisure time. If you have to work less, for most of us, that's actually a good thing. I think that's the longer-term future for us, is just a reallocation of how we spend time.
This shorter work week gives us all more leisure time.
La societat actual s'ha passat de rosca. El decreixement és l'opció prenda d'urgència per no caure en un col·lapse.
Maybe we can grow our compassion, we can grow our love, we can grow our understanding, we can grow knowledge, we can learn new skills, and we have plenty of areas to grow and have exciting life and challenging life, but growing in materialism is not part of the economics that can work.
This is making a lot of sense, but I still don't get what it will actually look like for me, my family, and friends. Will I lose my job?
It looks like a lot of things that are happening right now.
You can work with 1 day a week and get by. If you live simple, that's kind of the idea. Part of what I've been talking about with this radical simplicity is how do we not become a slave. But the cabin is small. It's only a few hundred square feet, so if in 20 minutes you have your heat, you know, you could go out and work in 20 minutes. What are you going to make, $5? So you could either, in economic terms, you could either go out and cut your wood or go and sit at a job you don't like. And you probably come out a little ahead doing it yourself. Like many Americans, I had this dream of, more or less, I guess, some part of the American dream, and studied engineering. Started actually working on military, electronics, kind of climbed the corporate ladder. I didn't really realize at the time, but I was basically an arms dealer. So I started having a lot of doubt with what I was doing. I said my life has to work for something better. What would happen if 6 to 7 billion people lived like me? Could it be sustained? I began asking myself that question. And it was clear that you couldn't. So then I thought, I don't want it if everyone can't have it. I don't want a house bigger than everyone on the planet can have. I don't want a vehicle that only the rich can have, only the privileged few. And I ran the numbers, and I realized in 1989 I would be able to live on $5,000 a year. So I just went in and gave my notice on Monday, and that was 20 years ago. So this living simple on the land allows you to have your creative energy for your own life, and then the good of all is the ultimate, we think. Degrowth is, in a way, instead of getting bigger materially, getting smarter materially.
But what about if you live in the city?
Green Goddess Joan is an example to us all. What a magnificent example Joan Pick is to us all. Joan's example left me with not only the realisation that I had much to learn, but also gave me numerous ideas for heading in the right direction. Oh, the article about Joan Pick was great. That's not bad, is it? Good. One kettleful equals one bath and tracksuit wash. Stand in this, so you save your water. And you're careful you don't splash, you see. We have to sell a whole new ethos to the world. We have to sell economy to profligates. I play the management consultant, giving people the facts essential for wise decisions. I do this by imagining the Earth is a business called Earth Enterprise. The only profitable course for the business is the idea of energy efficiency as measure and aim. I demonstrate in my own personal lifestyle how to put these principles into practice. The key thing is my electricity bill, which is £6 a month, which is nothing. My gas bill is nothing. My petrol consumption is about a few cc's a year to clean the typewriter keys. I don't cook anything, so I don't use the fridge. This is the remainder of my food for the day. I'm nearly I don't use the cooker. This is filing of scrap paper. And this is filing of useful documents. I still drink tea and coffee, which I shouldn't do, but you have to have some vices, don't you? Don't use the coffee machine anymore, really, except when I'm being really bad. So there's no waste in my diet. It means there's minimal packaging in my diet. It means there's minimal processing in my diet. And this is how people reckon that I was the lady with the smallest carbon footprint.
What about travel? Is there anything that you would motivate you to get in a car?
No. I run everywhere. This means that I can keep my local patch, the whole of South London, under constant survey.
That sounds a bit extreme for me. Are people doing this on a community level?
Lewes has been a transition town now for just over 2 years. So what a transition town does is it tries to find a path from our carbon-intensive way of life that we have today and transition towards a low-carbon way of life, which will both reduce our carbon footprint and reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. It's a community response. It's asking the question, what can we do as a community? A local currency can only be spent with local traders. Supermarkets and chains can't take them, so that it makes people go into local shops and it gives them a reason to shop locally. So we now have over 30,000 Lewis pounds in circulation, and we still have more in store in case people want them. You buy your Lewis pounds in an issuing point, and then you go to a shop and you pay for your goods with Lewis pounds. The trader will then take the Lewis pounds and they will give them back in change to the next person who comes who wants Lewis pounds in their change. And that's how it keeps circulating.
Yeah, but even if this is happening at a local level, the banks, the corporations, and the governments, they'll never buy it.
You'd be surprised. Difficult times call for radical solutions.
Bueno, soy Enric Durán, activista social desde hace más de 10 años. Desde entonces me he dedicado a tratar de fomentar redes. Primero lo hice desde el movimiento antiglobalización, luego lo hice desde el movimiento por el decrecimiento. Y en el año 2005 decidí empezar una acción de expropiación a los bancos. Pedí muchos créditos a hasta 39 bancos, un total de 492.000 euros, con la intención de no devolverlos y dedicarlos a alternativas al capitalismo y a criticar y crear un debate social sobre el crecimiento y a dónde nos lleva el sistema capitalista actual. Se hizo público a través de las publicaciones Crisis, luego salió la publicación Podemos, estuve 2 meses en la cárcel. El sistema de crédito necesita crecer y crecer cada vez más y por eso necesita dar cada vez más facilidades a la gente para endeudarse. Entonces, en los últimos 10 años hemos visto un exceso cada vez mayor de financiación al consumo, de tarjetas, de formas de que la gente compre sin tener ningún tipo de ahorro, y también de hipotecas cada vez más caras, fomentando un sobreendeudamiento de la gente. Desde mi acción se demostró qué descontrol hay en relación a la petición de préstamos de la gente y hasta qué punto es posible pedir muchos préstamos que sea totalmente inviable devolverlos y en cambio que se sigan consiguiendo nuevos préstamos.
La idea es dejar aproximadamente 10 millones de barriles de petróleo bajo tierra con el enorme beneficio ambiental, con la condición de que la comunidad internacional y principalmente los países desarrollados, que han sido los principales actores, y hay que decirlo, de esas emisiones de carbono que se encuentran en la atmósfera, colaboren con este propósito.
So the president has proposed leaving the oil in the ground and continuing to provide these global and local ecosystem services if there was a financing mechanism to kind of replace the lost income, because Ecuador is yet dependent on oil. So we looked at what level of benefits are provided globally which would justify that kind of payment. And certainly, Yasuni provides $1 to $5 billion of benefits if you take into account climate change and biodiversity and flood protection and all these benefits each year. So it's certainly of greater value than the oil reserve.
In Canada, we have the Canadian Institute of Wellbeing, which is in the process of developing a Canadian Index of Wellbeing, which will be a much richer record of how well Canadians are doing with respect to environment and health and quality of life in many respects. And it's that kind of change that we're seeing in other countries.
President Sarkozy in France in 2009, he appointed a new commission with some top economists who very late they have discovered that economic growth is not the sort of unique objective. And Sarkozy, he said, la joie de vivre is more important than economic growth. Well, I don't know why he really believes this, perhaps because he has a happy domestic situation with Carla Bruni, but in fact, he's totally right.
The Church of England as a whole is committed to a programme, because we are English, there's a bit of comedy in it, and I am the chairman. And the programme is called Shrink the Footprint. We have had various publications like that little pamphlet, How Many Light Bulbs Does It Take to Change a Christian? That's sort of cheerful and sensible advice. And what we're trying to say is that confronting the reality of the challenge that faces us, you can nevertheless fast for joy. You don't necessarily have to get measured up for your hair shirt. You have a lively sense of your interconnectedness with people throughout the globe, and it is possible to approach this whole challenge in a very joyful spirit.
And what about the Global South? Don't they need to grow? Isn't it their right? After all, the North has gotten rich off their resources.
The reason we have hunger with 1 billion people starving, another 2 billion people diseased because of the wrong kind of eating, is because of the mismeasure on which the global economy is based.
My comments on slowing growth rates are specifically directed at the rich countries. So I think we have to leave some room for poorer countries to benefit from growth.
What the world is needing now so bad is fairness, equity, fairness. And the Northern Hemisphere hasn't been fair.
Some people say, well, what will happen in the South, in the poor countries? They are not going to be able to export so much to us. But not everybody agrees with this, because many of these exports from Latin America, from Africa now, are phosphorus, oil, gas, coal, copper, bauxite for aluminium, sometimes gold, also paper pulp, also perhaps ethanol or biodiesel for cars in the north. All these exports from the south of raw materials they really destroy the environment, because all this is now taken from what we call the commodity frontiers.
We are going to lose our water. There are so many birds inside, so many animals here, and we are staying together with these animals and keeping our cattle. We are friends to this pasture, so it will be lost to our culture.
Yo vengo de comunidad de lo que hablamos de la zona intangible, lo que queremos vivir, nuestra cultura, lo que queremos guardar, nuestra armonía, nuestra selva, nuestra forma de vivir, porque el país necesita mucha economía, pero nosotros como indígenas que vivimos ahora no necesitamos lo que queremos vivir, porque la naturaleza nos da para nosotros.
When you mine water too fast, as Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola do, with 1.5 to 2 million liters per day per plant, you're going to run out of water, you're going to create water scarcity. When you start mining soil fertility, within 3-4 years you can leave soils in tropical climates desertified. When you replace the rich biodiversity we conserve out here and replace it with industrial monocultures, you lose your capacity to produce more food, contrary to the myth that industrial agriculture produces more food.
I think the experience all over the world shows very clearly that growth per se does not help poverty. To actually deal with poverty, you need very clear policies and measures to be able to address it. Making sure that the benefits can be distributed, or making sure that people actually have ownership over the economic change that is happening.
I once was helped by a tribal man. I wanted to give him some gift, any gift. But it took full 10 minutes to think over what he could ask for. And in the end he said, I have everything, I don't need anything. So this is a great slap to the development economy of showing that poverty, poor people are always desiring of having more, and they are unhappy, and in order to get happiness they have to gather some material goods to accumulate.
There are many people in the South, environmental movements or poor people movements, who don't want to export so much. What they want is to keep their own territory, and they are allies, these environmentalists of the poor or environmental justice movements in the South. They are the main allies of the economic degrowth movement in the North.
We want growth, but we are going to reinvent it so that it's going to be both inclusive and it's going to be environmentally benign. And I believe it's possible for us to do.
So, where do we go from here?
You're in a balloon. There's a lot of ballast there. You throw it over the side and the balloon rises.
Conchera soy y no me compadezcan. Si estas son especies que dan los manglares y los camaroneros no se han dado cuenta que nos han quitado la luz de la vida que Dios nos brindó, el sustento diario con honestidad. Y dicen los ricos que poseen dinero, que todo lo tienen con facilidad. Si el rico mirara la ley de la vida que Dios nos brindó, él no se creyera más útil que el pobre y no nos trataran con tanta crueldad. A Dios le rogaran como ruega el pobre con necesidad, que Dios le dé fuerza a seguir en la lucha y defender el manglar. A Dios le rogaran como ruega el pobre con necesidad, que Dios le dé fuerza a seguir en la lucha y defender el manglar. Y entonces, ¿qué quieren? ¿Qué quieren que haga? ¿Que me ponga alegre como en día de fiesta? mientras los manglares están terminando. Quieren que me ría, quieren que la risa me ensanche la cara como tonta. Si hasta los gobiernos negociaron los manglares, conchera soy y no me compadezcan.